First and foremost, I just want to acknowledge the fact that yes, I am technically about a week late on this. I wanted to give some time in a couple of days for me to marinate my thoughts and just offer the most unbiased and critical analysis of last weekend's Pokemon Go event and try and bring you the best quality um, look back and my honest thoughts on the whole matter. So the Hoenn Tour was last week, and they stretched it out over 2 days rather than just the one day, which the Kanto and Johto Tour were in years previous. And not only that, they kind of mixed up the formula a little bit as well. Instead of paying for this ticket, it was technically free, even though you kind of had to do some special research in order to get all of the benefits from the weekend, which I did. And I also planned on making a vlog the way that I made a blog for Kanto and Johto. But as the day went on, I kind of realised that that just wasn't going to be something that um, was going to be that viable for me to do because there was just not enough content throughout the 2 days in order to justify bringing that vlog. Now I'm going to go for the most obvious criticism first. While the shiny odds were boosted, they weren't boosted as much as they had been in previous years. And that is definitely a big issue. I know that Niantic probably want to move away from these events being sort of expected to find 20 to 10 to 20 shinies. But they also need to understand that that's kind of what the community expects and what the community wants. And they're kind of pushing against sort of the interests and the desires of the community by doing that. These events need to be about the shinies because that is essentially why people play these events. There are people who find other reasons to play these events, but for the most part, for the majority of people, it's definitely about those shinies, especially with the precedent that's been set with the Kanto and the Johto tours. The Hoenn Tour needed to follow suit, and it just didn't. The odds were definitely boosted. I found 4 shinies on the first day, although I found none on the second day. Finding 4 in one day is definitely not something that happens every day. So they were definitely boosted, but probably not by as much as they should have been. Just to give you an example, I found 22 shinies in one day in the Kanto Tour, 17 shinies on the Johto Tour, and 4 shinies in the Hoenn Tour. Now, I know that RNG is something that is very unpredictable. You can have a 1 in 2 chance. You can literally have a 1 in 2 chance of finding something, and it could take a billion tries, or you could have a 1 in a billion chance of finding it straight away. RNG is not that predictable, and there are people who walked away from the Hoenn Tour with 10 plus shinies, and that's great for them. Personally, I walked away with 4. I know people who walked away with 0 throughout the entirety of both days. It's just not good enough. Even though it was a free event, I think most people are in agreement that they would rather have paid for a ticket than get it for free and have these much worse shiny odds. And again, I know that the argument's going to be that Niantic probably wants to move away from these events being all about the shinies. But the thing is, with the precedent that's been set and what the community kind of wants, it's just not viable for that to be the case. If they want to have events that aren't about the shinies, make new events. Leave these ones alone, the ones that have established the shiny odds being the main thing that brings people to these events, because you're not going to have people go, oh well, I guess it's not about the shinies anymore. The majority of people are just going to stop playing them, and that's the simple but honest truth of it all. And people are already talking about that. You look on Twitter right now, and all the discourse is people wondering if Pokemon Go itself is even worth still playing. And I don't want to see that personally, as someone who loves Pokemon Go and all of these community events that go on. Niantic needs to take a look at what the fan base is asking for. And I know that, people can't just demand and get, but with things like this, I think that it's kind of important. Moving away from the shiny odds as well, there are other things that were lacking in this version of the tour that weren't lacking in previous years. One thing that I thought was really unique and fun about the Kanto tour was the fact that we had the challenge of catching every single Kanto Pokemon available, all 150 of them, not counting Mew because that was part of the Masterwork challenge. And that was also not there at the Hoenn Tour. I think the Johto Tour also had something similar. We had evolution challenges, we had trade challenges, we had catch challenges and things like that, and they just weren't there. There were collection challenges, but it was nowhere near as many Pokemon as it should have been. It should have been all the Hoenn Pokemon. I know that when you get to Generation 3, you've got a lot more legendaries, so that will be a lot more raiding to be done. So, for example, Generation 1 had the 3 legendary birds and Mewtwo. Generation 2 had the 3 legendary beasts, Ho-Oh and Lugia. Generation 3, you've got the 3 Regis. You've got Groudon, you've got Kyogre, you've got Rayquaza, all these legendaries. Generation 4 is going to have a similar issue as well with the Lake Guardians, and Palkia and Dialga and Darkrai and Cresselia and Shaman and Manaphy and Fione and all that sort of stuff. So they're going to have to try and think. Oh, Latios and Latias as well. So obviously, they can't expect people to do that many raids, because then people start complaining about how these events are all about people who are willing to spend money to get the raid passes. But that's what free raid passes are for. That's what, I'm going to come to another solution in a minute, of something for me to praise the Hoenn Tour. But there's other ways of getting around that. I really missed that collection challenge aspect of it. It really felt like this event was lacking in a lot of ways, and they just didn't replace the things that it was lacking with an alternative. And I think that was the thing that draws this entire event back entirely in my mind. Most of the regional Pokemon that we haven't had a chance to get were locked behind eggs, and if you're someone who doesn't spend a lot of money on the game like me, you're not going to have the chance to get those Pokemon like Tropius or Relicanth or things like that. Pokemon that aren't normally available around the world were only available in eggs, and incubators, they're not cheap, and unless you have some of the free incubators from different tasks that have been given over the years, which I don't, you're really only going to be able to hatch one egg at a time. I was lucky. The only regional Pokemon from Hoenn that I didn't already have was Relicanth. I picked up one 10k egg throughout that entire event, and when it hatched a few days after the event finished, it was a Relicanth, so I managed to add that to my Pokedex. But there are so many other Pokemon that I could have hatched from those eggs and missed out on the chance to get Relicanth. And unless you are someone who's willing to drop serious money into the game to get those incubators to pick up as many eggs as possible, there's a lot of people that are going to miss out on those Pokemon. Moving into the plus sides of the event, I really like the fact that they introduced Primal Kyogre and Primal Groudon as well. I'm hearing that the shiny odds were decent on those raids. Normally, raid legendaries have a 1 in 20 chance or a 5% chance to be shiny. From what I see, they were kind of boosted a little bit this event as well. I personally did a few Kyogre raids, a few Groudon raids. Didn't get any of them as shinies, but I did manage to get a decent amount of primal energy, but still wasn't able to revert any of them into their primal forms because of the fact that, let's be honest, they were very expensive in order to primal revert them. And despite how many raids I managed to do over those 2 days, still didn't get enough energy by the end of it. So that was a little bit frustrating. It's kind of a mega evolution for a legendary, so I kind of get it. But yeah, you're going to have to do a lot of raids in order to get that mega energy. Another thing as well, tying it back to another point I made earlier, one thing I did like is the fact that Latios and Latias were appearing in the wild. They kind of experimented with this with the legendary beasts last year for the Johto Tour with Raikou, Entei and Suicune. They were appearing in the wild. They were very hard to catch in the wild, but we also had the opportunity to catch them in a task by taking photos of them, and they brought that back with the Latios and Latias. I'm hearing that they had quite decent shiny odds, but I didn't personally find any shinies, even though I found quite a few of them myself. But again, that's a good feature, and it's something I want to see back. Next year for the Sinnoh Tour, I'm expecting the Lake Guardians, Mesprit, Uxie, and Azelf to be those Pokemon that appear in the wild. But again, that's something that can sort of help with the legendary issue that they kind of maybe having right now. Rather than, one thing I didn't like this year is the fact that Registeel, Regice, and Regirock were sort of locked behind timed research before the event, and Rayquaza was in raids after the event. The Hoenn Tour is supposed to be about catching every Hoenn Pokemon, so bring us all those legendaries, but find other ways of getting us to interact with them. The Regis could have been so perfect. They could have, in the research, there could have been rewards in the research by having to do something similar as in Ruby and Sapphire. I think there's a lot of things they could have done to have made things just feel a little bit different and brought them to us without having making us do 10 plus raids just to collect every legendary, and then the fact that there's the primal reversion as well. I feel like there's other ways they could have done that, and having them appear in the wild, having them appear in special research, having them appear in timed research and things like that, I think that it's really, really good to have stuff like that. And they kind of did it, but they also kind of dropped the ball with it a little bit this year as well. So this positive is kind of a mixed bag. I just hope they do it better next year for the Sinnoh Tour. And the special research was weird as well. We had to choose one of 3 different paths between Surskit, Cacnea and Gulpin. I picked Cacnea, and one of the challenges was catch 15 Cacnea, and it rewarded me with a Cacnea. So I'd caught 15 Cacnea to get a Cacnea. I'd heard rumours that Cacnea would have been a guaranteed shiny, but that was not the case. But even if that isn't the case, I'm not saying to have given us a guaranteed shiny by the end of that. Just something a little bit different. You know, they went out of their way to have these 3 paths. At the very least, have it be a Cacnea wearing a Hoenn hat, or a Surskit wearing a Hoenn hat, or wearing sunglasses that said Hoenn Tour or something. Something to be a little bit different rather than just catch 15 Cacnea, you get rewarded with a Cacnea. Like, to me, that just sort of summed up the Hoenn Tour. That was when I just sort of gave up and looked at my phone and just went, I'm not making a vlog for this event. I'd already started filming some stuff. I'm probably going to put that footage in here somewhere. You've probably already seen it edited around throughout the video. But it's just, it wasn't good enough, if I'm being completely honest with you. Like, the event was free, and I can't really complain too much about them lowering that bar so that more people have got that sort of entry into the event. My daughter played the event for the first time, and obviously, you know, she doesn't have a lot of money, so, you know, being free, it's going to be good for her. It's going to be good for other children that want to play the game. It's going to be good for people on low incomes, and that's absolutely fine. But if the trade-off is everyone losing out on different experiences that have been in there in the past with the paid version, especially with the fact that the Masterwork ticket has also been available, and that just adds like a paid element to the game anyway, it didn't feel worth it to me. The Hoenn Tour was a complete disaster, and I really hope that this isn't a sign of things to come, and I really hope that the Sinnoh Tour next year is a return to form for these events, because if not, then honestly, it's just setting a bad precedent for Pokemon Go's future, in my opinion. And honestly, if you look at the discourse of the people who are playing the game, the people who are keeping the game alive and get to decide whether or not the game survives, seems like it's not a very uncommon sentiment. So those are my pros and cons of the event. Let me know what you thought. Drop a comment in the comment section below. Don't forget, if you haven't already, subscribe to this channel. I make videos multiple times a week. And yeah, let me know what you thought of the Hoenn Tour down below in the comments. Don't forget to like this video. Also, head on over to twitch.tv/James of the Thunder and go and follow me on there to be notified whenever I go live. I live stream multiple times a week, so you'll be notified whenever I go live in the future if you go and follow me over on Twitch. I've been James of the Thunder. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.